Well, hey there, you're on the internet, I have some free time, and welcome to the Triple N Network, where all you newbie noob nerds can find all the news you'll need. Let's look at an ink today, shall we? Now, today's ink, I have in sample form, and it's by Private Reserve. I haven't done an ink from them in a while, so I thought I'd give it a shot. Claret. And I know I just mispronounced that. It's probably Claret, or something. I don't speak French. However, I did grow up in the California wine country. I know what this type of wine that it's named after is supposed to look like, and this isn't it. This looks like a partially dehydrated Vino Nobile. It's very dark, it's very purple. It's a lovely color. It doesn't really evoke claret, but yeah. Pens I used were these. This is a Nemosine Singularity. Or is it Nemosine, or is it Nemosine? I don't know. But yeah, it's got a 0.8 stub, so sort of a smallish medium stub. It's generally fairly dry, as you can probably tell, because you can't really see through the tines. That's my going easy pen. And also this JinHao X450, and I love my X450s because they all tend to be pretty broad and pretty wet. This is sort of the more bring it pen. So, yeah. Thought I'd try and find some inks that it could, I don't know, be compared to. And the thing is, there's something about this ink that makes it not really comparable. It's almost got some hints of brown in it. It's got some purpliness to it. But yeah, so anyways, here's Claret. And here's Noodler's Goulet exclusive Purple Heart, which is just a bit more purple. But I feel like these bits and this purpley bit through here, kind of similar. Thematically, that I'd also check Diamine Merlot, which is much more maroony, much more red. But yeah, it has some hints of purple to it. And then also Diamine's Tyrian Purple, which again is just a bit more red, just a bit more reddy purple. But yeah. Also thought I'd see what this ink can stand up to. Here's water. And the water broke it apart pretty well. That did okay. 1/3 bleach solution sort of turned it orangey yellow, but also didn't move it too much, which was somewhat disconcerting. Ammonia pen flush actually got it moving, but not completely gone. Fascinating enough, hydrogen peroxide was what really got this ink moving. I can't really explain that, but there it is. Now, let's check out the chromatography, because the chromatography is pretty interesting. I hope my camera will pick up on this color, because it hates this color. Can you see up at the top? There's this bright baby blue right along here. And then here we get some purple, and then here we get something that looks almost exactly like that Tyrian purple. It's much more pinky purple. But a very clear distinction where the ink starts, and it's sort of resisting being pushed up. Now here's where I let it dry, which of course is not how you're supposed to do it. And what you get is less blue up at the top, a much darker dot at the bottom, and less of a dark band where the blue separates. So, yeah. Anyways, paper test, top down in density, Clairefontaine 90 grams per square meter. Yeah. It's sort of like a dark, almost like hazy purple, but it's nice. The 0.8 stub took 6 seconds. The broad and wet JinHao actually only took 13, which isn't too bad. You definitely see some shading. You definitely see almost like a halo effect around the darkest parts. That's rather nice. Yeah, I say there's like maybe minor echo, but I'm really not seeing much of it. This paper is very dense, and this isn't a very aggressive ink. And it's so far quite well behaved. No bleed, no feather, no spread, no echo, no sheen. And kind of like we saw on the chromatography, this does not want to move. It does release a little bit of purple, it gets a little hazy, but you could even still see the shading. It's still very there, very clear. If you had to recover that, I'd say you absolutely could. Next up is Fabriano Paper, a paper that I've started to include in some of my tests because I love it. And it's not that hard to find, and it's great. It's an 85 gram paper, has a bit more of a texture to it. It's not steamroller smooth like Clairefontaine. It doesn't have a ceramic coating like Rhodia, but it tends to be able to handle inks that even Clairefontaine and Rodia have trouble with. But yeah, so here we see that the 0.8 stub took 11 seconds, and the Broad and Wet JinHao took 20. But hopefully this will show up on camera. See that gold sheen in the scrubby? And you get a halo effect. It's very nice. You get some lovely shading. At no point does this ink look undersaturated. So even where it's lightest, where it's at its thinnest, it never looks undersaturated. It always looks like there's enough ink in that ink. It's very well behaved here. So maybe there's some minor echo, and I guess maybe there could be in the scrubby, but I was laying it on pretty thick trying to make sure I could get some of that sheen on camera. So that might be human error. But yeah, no bleed, no feather, no spread. All very well behaved. The water test, it did turn the page purple, but again, what's there is pretty clear and pretty dark. If you had to recover that, you absolutely could. Next up is Rhodia, 80 grams per square meter, where we get shading, but we almost start to get a bit of a woolliness in the scrubby for the X450. I don't know. But yeah, the 0.8 stub took 7 seconds to dry. The Broad and Wet JinHao took 17. We do get like the barest little hints of sheen. It's not going to come up on camera, I know it already. But yeah, great shading, very well behaved. I said there's mild feathering, but now I can't really find it. I was looking before trying to find it, and I can't find the feathering. I think I might have just been confused with the wooliness or whatever. But yeah, there's no bleed, no feather, no spread, no sheen. Not much of an echo, even in the scrubby. That's rather nice. It did dye the page a fair bit. See, it did turn it kind of purple, and oddly, but it might be because this is sort of like the end of the sheet, it started to feather and explode a little bit. But just a little. I mean, if you had to recover that, I think you could. Next up is Tomoe River, which is known for drawing out dry times and also bringing out sheen, which it most certainly did. Now, I laid it on pretty thick in the scrubby trying to make sure I could get sheen on camera. And it's in the writing as well. It's just it's always easiest to get it in the scrubby. However, since this is such thin paper and I was laying it on so thick, here you do get some echo. But of course, this is a fairly dark ink anyway, so you might have seen echo regardless. Now, the 0.8 stub took 13 seconds. The Broad and Wet JinHao took 23, which really isn't bad. Even when you don't catch the light to get a halo, you get a very nice, sheen, you get a nice halo effect, which I quite enjoy. It's very well behaved on here. Of course, there's no bleed, no feather, no spread. I say that it's slightly wet. You know, it just goes, it's like barely on the side of wet. It's a 5.5, quite enjoyable. This paper does love to let ink slide away when you add more water, and here it kind of did. It got a bit hazy, it got much lighter, but what's at the center is very clear. It didn't feather, didn't explode. If you absolutely had to recover that, you could. Now for the next 3 tests, I only used the 0.8 stub, except to write the name. And we're going to have some issues here, because this is the world's worst 20-pound copier paper, but that should be expected. And also, let's bring it in close. Do you see any feathering? Because I don't. Not bad, right? There's no feathering. None. You don't really retain any shading. It took 2 seconds to dry. But you also don't get that much of a spread. If we look at it, I mean, you do get spread, sorry. There's, but it could be a lot worse. But there's no feathering. And compared to some of the tests we've seen on this paper, there's really not much bleed. Okay, that's the broad nib, but really not bad. Even in the scrubby, didn't come through. That's quite nice. I just knocked the camera. Now, because this is a more absorbent paper, it tends to suck the ink in, make it harder to wash out. And look at that. I mean, it did dye the page a bit. You can see that haze of purple. But it didn't feather, it didn't explode. It didn't even get that much lighter. That is a wonderful showing right there. Next up is Mead Notebook Paper. Where again, it took 2 seconds to dry. And maybe it got a little woolly, but we don't get much spread, and we get an occasional feather. Here we do get a little bit of feathering here and there. But it's not obscene. It's actually quite well behaved on here. And look at that. No bleed. And this is physically thinner than 20-pound copier paper. I mean, like here, but that's the scrubby where I was trying to get some shading out of it, so. Yeah, and this paper hates water. Usually terrible things happen when you add water. But look at that. It didn't even dye the page all that much. It's very clear, very there. You can actually kind of see some shading almost. Didn't feather, didn't explode. If you had to recover that, you absolutely could. Now, lastly is Moleskine notebook paper, which I hate because it's terrible and it hates ink. But yeah, it took 4.5 seconds to dry. I'm going to bring this in because I want you to see this. See how woolly that looks? It has like a gross texture to it. Yeah, well, anyways. Yeah, it's not great. There's some spread, there's some feathering, not an obscene amount, but some. But then when you think about how well this did on the other cheap papers and how this is a very moderate, small to medium nib, and you get all of this, I hope the camera picks this up, but it's just everywhere. You get these little dots where it nearly makes it through. Bear in mind, there's a very bright light coming in this direction. That's not, I'd like to see better than that. Is it terrible? No. Compared to a lot of other inks we've seen on this paper with more moderate nibs, is it terrible? No, no it is not. But I'd still like to see better if I'm going to pay this much for it. But anyways, moving on. Water test. This paper hates ink. It hates water. Ink plus water equals disaster. And compared to what we've seen before, this does qualify as a disaster on that scale. But really not too bad. It's fairly there, fairly clear, fairly dark. Didn't feather and explode too much. Compared to what we've seen before, it could have been a heck of a lot worse. So, there you go. There's Private Reserve's Claret, or Claret. Doesn't really evoke the wine, but it is a lovely purple color. Very well behaved. In like a reasonably moderate pen on cheap paper, did fantastic. Definitely worth looking into. Had much more water resistance than I was expecting, but yeah, for your consideration from the Triple N Network. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more, please subscribe to the channel. And thanks for watching. Bye.